Sukkot crowds smell different from Passover crowds. Passover smells like burnt fat. Sukkot smells like citron and willow and the wet earth of branches outdoors all week. On the last day of that Sukkot, I had gone into the temple courts because Mara wanted a thing from a stall and we had been separated by the press at the gate. I was looking for Mara. I was carrying nothing. My hands were open. That mattered later. The reason I stopped at the colonnade was the noise the other end of the court made when men dragged a woman across stone. There is a noise to that. A man being dragged makes one noise. A woman being dragged makes a different one. Not because her body is different at the floor, bodies are bodies on stone, but because her clothing is different. A woman's skirt knots and slows and bunches and rides up and is yanked back down and yanked up again. And the dragging men try to do the dragging without looking like they want her to be uncovered. Because even men who are dragging a woman to be killed do not want, in public, to be the kind of men who would also be looking. So they yank her skirt down with one hand and yank her wrist forward with the other. And the rhythm of yank down, yank forward is a rhythm a person who has ever stood near a market knows in his bones, without knowing why he knows it. I knew it. I stopped walking. The men were 4, maybe 6. The eldest had a beard streaked white in 3 places and a voice trained to be heard by other men. They had her arms behind her back, both arms, one man on each. Her face was down. I saw a fall of dark hair and a streak of dust along the side of her neck where the hair had slipped. She was perhaps 25. Her skirt was knotted at her left hip. The knot was wrong. I noticed this and then could not stop noticing it. The knot was the knot a woman ties when she has been dressed in a hurry by men, not by herself. A woman knots her own skirt low and even. These men had tried to knot it for her and had done it the way men who have never tied a woman's skirt try to do it, fast and high and wrong, and the wrongness of the knot told me before any word had been spoken. That they had pulled her out of a place where a knot did not need to be tied. They had taken her from sleep or from a bed or from a wash. They had taken her from the place where men accusing women of these crimes always take them from. I am old now and have learned not to say more about that. The reader is not stupid. They marched her past me toward the colonnade. The teacher, Jesus, though I would not say his name to myself yet, was sitting on the 2nd step, teaching about a vineyard. He looked up. The eldest cleared his throat and spoke loudly enough to make sure the colonnade and the surrounding stalls heard. "Teacher," he said, "this woman was caught in adultery in the very act. In the very act. The phrase has the smell of a witness who is also a watcher," he went on. "In the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. What do you say?" I was close enough now to see the elder's eyes. His eyes were looking at the teacher. His eyes were also looking at the crowd. His eyes had the look of a man who has set up a trap on his own ground and is waiting to see which leg of the trap the prey steps on first. The teacher did not look at the elder. He looked at the woman. He looked at her for a small piece of a moment, long enough for me to see his face do a thing I have seen on faces and never been able to name. Then he looked down. He bent. He wrote in the dust. I could not read what he wrote. I cannot read now and could not read then. Most of the people I have ever loved could not read. The teacher who bent in the dust knew this about most of his crowd. He was writing for the part of the crowd that could read. A Pharisee was standing not 3 steps from me. He was reading. His face changed. I have spent 60 years trying to remember what kind of change. It was not anger. It was not amusement. It was not piety. It was the change a man's face makes when he has been carrying a small stone in the pocket of his own chest for years, and somebody has just pointed at his pocket, and he can feel the small stone there as if for the first time, and he does not know what to do with the pointing. He took half a step back. I watched the half step. I have watched 100 men since then take half steps. The half step is the body's first vote. The mouth votes last. The teacher straightened. He said, I have repeated this in rooms for 60 years and have never improved it. Let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her. He bent again. He wrote again. I could not read it again. The Pharisee 3 steps from me read it. His face changed again. He did not take another half step. He took a whole step. He turned. He walked away. That was the moment. That was the moment a thing in the air of the court changed direction. It was not a wind. There was no wind in that corner of the court that morning. It was something the bodies of the crowd did almost at the same time, a small swaying back that you might call breath if you had a word for the breath of a crowd. The elders went first. That is what the Gospels say, and that is what I saw. The eldest of the dragging men, the one with the white-streaked beard, stood 3 breaths longer than I expected him to. His hand was still on the woman's wrist. He looked at the teacher's bent back. He looked at the woman. He looked at his own hand on the woman's wrist as if it had only that moment become his hand. He let go. He turned and walked. He did not look back. The others let go one by one. The woman did not fall. That detail is mine. The Gospels do not say, I say. She did not fall because she had been holding herself in a way that did not depend on the hands that were holding her, and when the hands left, the holding remained because her body had been doing the holding all along. She stood. Her hair was over her face. Her skirt was still knotted wrong. The teacher had bent over the dust the entire time. He straightened a 3rd time. He looked at her. He said, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" She raised her head enough. She said, "No one, sir." He said, "Then neither do I condemn you. Go now and leave your life of sin." Her shoulders, which had loosened on the first clause, tightened on the second. She was being given a thing. I had not expected that. I had expected mercy to be the absence of a stone. He was not nice. He was merciful. The two are not the same thing. I watched her shoulders tighten on the second clause. She straightened anyway. She walked the way a woman walks who has just been given a load and has not yet decided whether the load is worth the carrying. She turned. She walked past me. She was close enough that her shoulder almost touched my open hand. Her face, I saw her face then for the first time, was the face of a woman who has just survived a kind of dying. She is going to spend the rest of her life unsure she actually survived. Her right hand was shaking. It was shaking in the specific way a hand shakes after it has been gripping a thing for a long time and only just been allowed to let go. Her hand had not been gripping anything. The shaking was the same anyway. She walked through the gate. The crowd parted for her in silence that was not quite reverence and was not quite shame. It was the silence of a court that has just been told a thing it had not asked to be told. I stood there. I looked at the place where the men had stood. There were stones in the dust, not enough for a stoning, enough for the beginning of one, 3 of them, one almost round. I did not pick any of them up. It was only later, walking back through the booths, that I noticed the second thing. I had not even considered picking one up. Other men in the crowd had. The proof was on the ground, small piles at the places where the elders had stood. I had stones in me. There had been a stone in me on the Sepphoris Road the night Hanan was killed. There was the stone of every man I had ever wanted to kill in a wine shop fight. But I had not, that morning, picked any of them up. That is not virtue. That is what the teacher had been writing about. I think. I do not know. The writing was gone. I found Mara at the citron stall, finally, near the south end of the booths. She was holding 2 citrons and arguing about the price of a 3rd. She saw my face and put down the citrons and let the merchant have the argument. She came over. She said, "What?" I said, "A teacher saved a woman from being killed." She said, "Where?" I said, "The far colonnade." He bent and wrote in the dust. I could not read it. She said, "Neither can I." I said, "She walked through the gate." Mara said, "Good." She picked up her citrons again. She finished the argument with the merchant. The merchant lost. We walked home with 3 citrons and willow and a small bundle of myrtle and a memory neither of us had the words for in any language we shared. I did not tell her about the stones on the ground. I told her years later, after Hosea was born, after we had stopped being people who were starting anything and had become people who were keeping people alive. I told her about the stones one night and she said, "Good. Don't pick one up later either." Her whole answer. The whole of the help she ever gave me that morning, the only help I needed. I have thought about that dust for 60 years. The woman I do not know about, I never saw her again. I have prayed for her on Sukkot in private ever since. What stays is small. The wrong knot in a woman's skirt, the shaking of her right hand that had not been holding anything, the half-step backward, the eldest letting go. I have been weighed by writing I could not read. The teacher bent and wrote. He has not yet straightened.